Well, welcome again to another session of the 17th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. You're still stuck with me as your moderator. We have with us April Millet. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Malay.
Millet?
Malay, yeah.
Millet. Oh, very
I know, my
European.
husband's French.
April Millet has nearly 30 years of higher education experience at Penn State. You started when you were what, about 6 years old? He's got a master's of education in instructional systems and expertise in course design, educational technology, and faculty development. Currently serves as learning design faculty in the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences, where she partners with faculty to design and develop resident, hybrid, and online courses. Research focuses on instructional strategies, hybrid teaching, use of knowledge checks in online courses. I assume knowledge checks is not money. It's
No.
that. April's going to talk with us about keeping your students engaged in any instructional modality. It's all yours.
Okay, great. Well, since I've already been introduced, so what we're going to be talking today about are a bunch of different ways that you can keep your students engaged in any modality. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by talking about a little terminology just to make sure we're all speaking the same language. And then I'm going to talk about a framework that we use to make sure that there is enough engagement in a course for the students. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time looking at some interactions and trying to see how we can apply those to um, any type of modality. So, and all through this, I'm going to try to make this as active as we can for a 15-minute session, which sometimes can be a little bit challenging. So, um, there are there's a lot of research out there about how engagement and learning are linked. Engagement's a very broad term that covers everything from academic co-curricular activities all the way out to sports. And so obviously we can't talk about all of that engagement. So today we're going to be talking in this session um, about engagement that focuses on um, interactions within classes of the different modalities. Excuse me. So if you ask any K-12 teacher or higher education faculty member about engagement, um, they'll say the same thing. The more engaged students are in a course, the deeper their learning will be. So, however, this is easier said than done. Keeping students engaged in something is challenging when you have them all kind of huddled up in the same room. When they're dispersed, working on their own, it becomes very, very daunting for a lot of people. So I did promise some engagement. So our we have our first survey question, and we're just going to use chat. So can you put in chat what instructional modality? Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. What instructional modalities have you experienced, either as a faculty member, a teacher, a staff member? It doesn't matter, just anything that you've experienced, so we can see what we're working with here. Okay, and we'll just give you a couple of seconds to do this. Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Okay, thanks, Carol and Ola. Okay, so Of the responses we have so far, we have in person. Somebody's done that as a student, Carolyn, and online as and wait, in person as a student and instructor, and online as a student. Okay, me too. Um, and in person, web live online and asynchronous online for Carol, and Ola is an in person instructor. Oh, there's Autumn in person and online. Okay, great. So the most common instructional modalities, and some folks have different words for some of these things, and we saw that in the chat. We have face-to-face, and this is in person, traditional classroom. We've probably all done it, especially in K through 12. Online asynchronous. And for this, the content's delivered entirely online that allows the students to learn at their own pace. And I'll put a little caveat around this at their own pace, but within a group. So that there is a deadline that everybody is working towards, but how the student gets there is up to them. So there's like a weekly deadline. They're not just working on something all by themselves and doing everything alone and without any direction or anything like that. That's not what online education is. And I know that I'm talking to the choir here. But I have had some people ask about that. Does that mean it's just like self-propelled learning? No, it's not. Then we have online synchronous. This is a real-time virtual classes using tools like Zoom or Teams, kind of like what we're doing today. And we have hybrid blended. It combines face-to-face with online elements. A flipped classroom is when students review materials before hand, online usually, and then in class time is used for the active learning pieces. And that in class time can be either in person or it could be like a synchronous online as well. And then there's something called high flex, and I'm not very familiar with this one, but I've read about it. This offers students the choice to attend in person, online, either synchronously or asynchronously. And then we have competency-based learning, which this is a progress-based um, learning that's based on skill mastery rather than on time. So somebody, if they are very skilled, can get something through very quickly. And there are some universities around that have that sort of a model of learning. Okay, so next question. And this is another one, just type it in the chat for me. So, do you have a framework or a strategy that you use for keeping students engaged in your classes, or maybe something that a faculty member used that kept you engaged in their classes? And I'll just give you a couple of seconds to toss things there in the chat. Okay, Kimberly says gamification. That's a good one. Okay, rephrasing. That's a great one. Kahoot, Breakout EDU, Top Hat, poll questions. Okay. Oh, cooperative learning. Great. All righty. So what I'm going to talk about now is a little different, but what I'm going to talk about uses all of the things you just said. So, and maybe I need to start calling this something different, but so we use a framework called Moore's three types of interaction as our framework for incorporating engagement in courses. Moore's three types of interaction, it's not new. They've been widely used in all types of education since the 1990s. more specifically said that for students to succeed in distance education, which is where this particular thing came from, the course needs to have three types of interactions built into them. The same framework may be applied to all modalities mentioned earlier, not just distance education. The three types include learner-instructor interactions, learner-learner, and learner-content interactions. And I may use the terms instructors and faculty and learners and students interchangeably, so please forgive me. I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but he calls learners learners, and I'm think students because that's what we work with. So I just not trying to confuse anybody there. So please forgive me. Um, and something that we have learned over years is interactions just don't happen. They have to be created intentionally using instructional strategies. And a lot of the things that you guys put in the chat are instructional strategies. And so this framework is more of something that kind of lays over top of that. And then you use the instructional strategies to get to each one of the different types of interactions. So these instructional strategies, the ones that you mentioned, are tools that create the opportunities for students to interact with the faculty member, their classmates, or their content. Instructional strategies include any type of learning technique used by a faculty member to help students learn. It's very simple. Because there are so many different types of instructional strategies, we suggest having a building mindset when choosing options to use with students. So the learner instructor interactions focus on building faculty presence and establishing community within the class. Learner-learner interactions focus on building your class community, and learner content interactions focus on helping students build their learning capacity. Okay, so the first one is learner-learner interactions. These focus on building class community and relationships between peers in the class. Learner-learner interactions leverage principles of social learning theories like cooperative learning and collaborative learning. I believe somebody mentioned the cooperative learning in there to help students learn together. Learner interactions can be used with pairs, they can be used with groups, or as an entire class activity. All of these can be used with any instructional modality, but we will discuss my expertise for some of these was on the remote when we went remote a while ago. I think everybody remembers those dark times via Zoom. So I might mention more of that than some of the other modes, but I'm going to talk about all of them. Okay, so here's a list of the learner-learner interactions, and some of you might recognize some of these. I am going to talk about debates and share how you might do debate in the three main, and I'll show you what I mean by main kind of areas here. And then you're going to do something with the think, pair, share one, because everybody, I think, is probably very familiar with that one. Okay, so I think everybody knows what debate is. It's a very common instructional strategy that a lot of faculty use in many different disciplines. And so for debate, I kind of broke this down into the online synchronous, online asynchronous, and then something I kind of put a little bucket called in person. And so that the in-person part can be RI, it can be flipped, and it can be hybrid. So that in-person one, just to kind of differentiate it from the online synchronous, because online synchronous, all of it is going to be online versus the in-person, which there might be a component that's using a couple of different things, either resident instruction, flipped, or hybrid. So let me talk a little bit through these. So for a debate assignment, you would use video conferencing, and that would be We're using Zoom today, be something like that. There's also like Teams has video conferencing. There's a bunch of other ones, too many to name, actually. I think everybody's got one these days. Um, and so for the online synchronous, you would use your video conferencing tool to create the teams, and then use breakout rooms and put the teams into the breakout rooms to be able to work together. Some of the things you could use in your video conferencing would be things like, and I'm talking about Zoom here because that's what I'm familiar with, raising hands. You could use emoticons, chat, and polls to be able to actually make this happen. So the way that the online synchronous would work is you would have your students work in breakout rooms together, and then you would bring everybody back together. You'd probably have to have them do that. And maybe they would actually do some group work outside of class too to get that together. And then you would have everybody come together and they would present to the class their side of the debate. The other team would present their side of the class to the debate. And then you would use things like raise hand, emoticons, chat, and polls to, with the rest of the class, to see, who agrees with which side, to try to, allow the faculty member to ask questions and say, okay, well, who agrees with this and who agrees with that, and try to get, reasons why and those sorts of things. You could also have this other students turn on their camera and talk as well. So, and so there's a bunch of different things in a tool like Zoom that could be able to accommodate that. Now, the online asynchronous part, this one's a little tricky because there is like a time delay in there. So with this one, you would, create your teams and then tell your teams to organize their time, and work together, figure out, students use apps and different things that none of us probably use to organize themselves. And so organize themselves the best that they can, work on their debate, and record a video. And then they would then share that video with the class in a discussion forum. Each team would, and the class watches it, and then they discuss from there. And then maybe there is an assignment for the class that the faculty puts there, which would say, okay, so which side of the debate do you agree with? Who do you think won the debate and why? Debates and why? So that could be like an essay type uh, assignment. And then the faculty then would, you know, grade the people that did debate as well as that. So that's one way that you can do that. And the in-person, so for the RI, obviously the students could just give the debate in person with each other in the room, and then using the old-fashioned raise your hand kind of stuff. But you could also, for the flipped or hybrid, you could have the students work together um, outside of class and then just do the presentation in the class, or you could actually have them work on the debate stuff in the class, and then have them the next class present it. So there's a bunch of different things that you could do where you could combine aspects of the online synchronous, online asynchronous to work in the in-person flipped or hybrid or RI. So I know that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions? You can toss them in the okay, nobody's got any questions yet. Okay, so now I would like you to try it. So let's see here. I want to, so there is, you can either scan the QR code or put the tiny URL, and I'll put the tiny URL in the chat as well. And so I would like you to try one of these, and each of you have different, okay, tiny URL.com/. Strategies. Okay, I think that should get you there. And so on that document, list take the think, pair, share, and let's see if I can go there here so I can, okay, let's see. So on the learner-learner interactions, there's a strategy. So you could take the think, pair, share and start to write in here what some of the things that you would do, and I think pair share in these three main kind of buckets that I have here. You could also take one of your favorite instructional practices, maybe one of the ones that you mentioned in the chat, and kind of outline that in here. And everybody's going to get all of these after the session, so you can use, come back to here as a resource if people kind of fill this in. And I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. If you don't get it done, that's okay. But I think the main thing is for you to really kind of think about this and, kind of get out of your own kind of expertise. My expertise is in online learning, the asynchronous part of online learning. So when I put these kind of presentations together, I try to get out of my own head and say, okay, how would I go about doing this in this modality or that modality? And it really helps you kind of identify some really cool things that might actually help you in whatever your specialty is. Well, I would, if I was teaching this face to face, I'd probably do it that. Why can't you just do that this way? So those are just some things that you can kind of think about. And I don't want this to be like a high stress kind of thing. And I'm going to be quiet for like 2 minutes so you guys can do that. If anybody has any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. Thank you to everybody for participating. Sure, I can. Let's see here. There you go. Carol, that is okay. If you want to just kind of look at what other what other people are putting in the file, that is totally okay. Okay, well, some of these things, there are, when you get the presentation, there's going to be a lot of these things kind of spelled out. And I can give you, there's a tiny URL on the bottom of this page that will take you to a file called the Flexible Teaching Guide. If you, let's see here, put it in here. If you go there, it will give you a list, a very long list of all different types of instructional strategies with how you can implement them a couple of different ways as well. I think this presentation is more about learning kind of how to think about this, but there are a bunch of them there. So, and I need to move on so we don't run out of time today. But you can look in that URL and go to 6060 and it will tell you um, what that is. Okay, well, let's see. Everybody did a great job. Thank you for doing that. Okay. So really great ideas, some similarities, some differences. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to get back to where I was here. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is learner-instructor interactions. And so these type of interactions focus on building faculty's online presence, no matter which modality the course is taught in. It also helps them establish a class community, set expectations, and most importantly, helping students be successful. That's what these learner-instructor interactions are all about. And these are a little different, and I'm going to teach you about them a little differently too, because there really aren't specific instructional strategies for this particular thing. It's more communication and like a state of mind almost. So, and you'll see what I mean by that here. So, establishing a sense of community in your course is a vital aspect of engaging learners. Um, and the other benefit of this is it also helps maintain instructor presence. And so in this, instructor presence is very important for online courses, but it's also pretty important in your resident classes. So, and you would think that like, the students see the faculty member every day, so they have great instructor presence. That might not necessarily be the case for some faculty members. Maybe they're not really available to the students. They go in and teach and then they go do research or something along those lines. So one of the things with these establishing community ideas is that you're building student enthusiasm about the course and excitement in your course. You're communicating early and often with your students, creating a very welcoming climate for students. And if people have taught students after the pandemic, the students are different than they were pre-pandemic. They, at least I'm finding that they're different than they were pre-pandemic. And so, and what I mean by that is they need more of that soft touch kind of stuff than a lot of students did pre-pandemic. And it's hard to shift if you've been teaching for a while, it's really hard to shift what you've been doing and has worked for 15 years. And now all of a sudden the students are so different. And age groups, exactly. They are very, very different. And so, let's see here. So what are some of the things that you do in your classes to build community and to just try to make students feel welcome? Like, what are some of the strategies that you use in your classes? You can just, let's see. So that is a similar tiny URL. Oops. Oh, goodness. What happened? Oh, no. I hit the wrong thing. Hold on a second. Oh, shoot. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but I booted myself out of everything. Okay. Is the presentation back, I hope? Um, so the tiny URL there is still tiny URL, l.com slash l slash l dash I dash strategies. Well, the tiny and the URL got separated, but that's if you copy and paste, you should be able to get there. And so in this one, shoot, did it again. So for this one, find it. Oh, here we go. Okay, so for this one, put down your idea and then what you might do synchronously, how you might handle that if you were asynchronous, and what you might do in an in-person class. And we'll just do that for, a couple of minutes and then I'll tell you what some of the things that some of the faculty that I work with have done in the past. Just in case that link isn't working, here's the giant link. That'll get you there too. Okay. All righty. So while you're kind of looking at that, I can talk a little bit about some of the things that we've had faculty members do. And so um, if you are teaching like online, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, we've had faculty members that are pet people. And so they say, if you have a pet, share your pet, or, put your pet as um, your image for class today, if it's a online synchronous. Take a picture and show what it looks like outside your window, or show us a picture of something you love, or, something along those lines. Um, we've had faculty create like little short videos like each day just to say, hey class, welcome to class. Today we're going to be talking about this. Don't forget your due dates this week, kind of thing, for an asynchronous kind of class. We've had faculty use storytelling. So they'll like tell a story. It might be about themselves, it might be about something else, but just to like kind of get things started in the class. And then the faculty members always participate in whatever the case may be. So, okay, Carol is saying that sounds a lot like the mini lectures each week I'm supposed to pull out. Yeah, kind of. Like, and these things don't have to be every week. They can just be kind of, occasionally, that kind of thing. Um, and so, but those are some things that faculty have done in the past just to try to kind of um, show that they are human, they aren't just this faceless person online. They have talk about a current event. That's a really good one. That's like very specific to like a class. But that too can, if you don't feel comfortable talking about something personal, that's a really great idea to talk about events like that. And then just be present in the class, participate, if students post something, make sure that you're getting to it, or a TA, you can do that with TAs too, or getting to answer those questions as quickly as possible, because that'll make students feel like they belong in that class and, are being heard and those kinds of things. Um, the next thing, another aspect of this is setting expectations. And this goes both ways. What can you expect of your students, and what can they expect of you? And if you have set an expectation that you're going to get grades back within 2 days after the assignments turned in, and you can't, make sure that you communicate that with them. Don't just not do that, because we've had some trouble with faculty members that, ran into a family emergency something or something like that. And, we've got students like griping, and this poor person is like sobbing because they, lost a family member or something like that. Just try to communicate that stuff so you don't end up causing anger from the students. Because one thing about online learning, and it might be the same in person learning, is that for online learning, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, a faculty member in a lot of ways is like um, it sounds awful, and I apologize ahead of time, but it's almost like you're also a customer service representative for the class. And that's unfortunate, but we do have a lot of, like, especially with adult students, they tend to have very high expectations. They're paying for something, they want their worth out of that, whatever they feel it's worth. And so a lot of this kind of stuff with the student instructor stuff is all about that, and those expectations really are very important. If you're using webcams in class, make sure that the students know when they need to have them on, when they can turn them off, those kinds of things, and just be very explicit about all that stuff. And it'll cause a lot fewer questions, and your students, especially if you're following up with what they can expect from you, that they're going to feel much more confident in your course, that what they do and what you do, they're filling their expectations, you're filling their expectations. It really works towards that student instructor interaction. Okay. So just in the chat, just toss in like what any kind of expectation that you have for keeping your students engaged. What are some of the things that you might do that are along the lines of some of the things that we just talked that, have really worked for you that you'd like to share with some of your colleagues? And I'll just give you a couple of seconds for that one, since it's only a chat thing. Okay. Okay, doesn't seem like anybody has anything to say, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, and so the last part of the learner-instructor interaction, but I think is probably the most important part, is what we're all here for, is helping students be successful. The ways that faculty help students be successful are wide-ranging, and you can to this section. Everything from communicating how to set LMS settings to being flexible with office hours to the actual instructional design of your lessons. One of my favorite things that a couple of different faculty members have told me about is is called the temperature check. And what this is, it's a Likert scale and you can set whatever you want on those, everything from I totally get it to I'm totally lost, or more of an emotional kind of thing. I'm really stressed, or I'm cool as a cucumber, those kinds of things. Um, and so I want to show you how you might do some of those on the three different buckets that we have. So for these, we have for online synchronous, you could just use like the integrated polling tool that's in the web tool that you're using to actually host your meeting. You could use emoticons, you could ask students, use an emoticon to show your mood today, and again, this is getting to the fact that our students are very different than they used to be, and they need that more caring, it seems, than pre-pandemic. And I totally get it. I know that it was very stressful and just for a lot of people in a very sad time. And so it changed everybody, I think. And so can use emoticons. You can use an integrated whiteboard board. We had one faculty member that did like a plot. And so it was a science kind of class. And so they actually did an XY axis and had them plot different things on it, which was kind of interesting and to see where people were. There's like the quadrant thing. You could do something like that. Um, and to do something like this for the online synchronous, you could just use a poll or survey tool in your LMS. You can use an ungraded quiz to do something like that. You can share a file and actually, or a whiteboard, an online whiteboard if your university has something like that. So there are a bunch of different things that you could do that way too. And then you just have to set a deadline and then be able to go and kind of check that out to see how students are doing. You could maybe do that before a test or after a test, or, at the end of a lesson to see how they're feeling about, that lesson, or how confident they are about something. Um, the in-person, you could just use your typical thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. You could use things like color cards or emoticon cards you give students. You could use, if your in-person part is actually online, you could use any of the ideas that are in the online synchronous or the online asynchronous. All right. And so we are short on time. I think I am going to let you uh, guys skip this one. Um, but there is a URL here. Let's see. Grab the URL. If you want to go, if you're thinking of something and you want to add it there, you can. But we're going to move on to the learner content interactions. And so these are probably the ones you're the most familiar with. And these were a lot of the ones that you posted in the chat earlier in the session. And so the last type is the learner content interaction, and these focus on building student learning capacity and relies heavily on the fundamentals of active learning. For this type of interaction to serve its goal, the content that's being interacted with should be relevant, current, and tied to the learning objectives of the course. So that's very important. And, I am, again, speaking to the choir here, or singing to the choir, um, about those types of things. These are a few of the learner content options that we can try in classes. And all of those are listed in that flexible teaching guide as well. So for this, we're going to do a little a quick quiz to show you what that one's like, and then hopefully one more that we're going to talk about as well. And so for this one, quick quizzes, think clickers, in your resident classes, clickers, the faculty member asks a question and then you answer something and it's very quick. You get an instant answer, those kind of things. Well, that's what this is like. So for the online synchronous, you could use polling for that. So the way this quick quizzes works is you ask a question and then you teach whatever it was you're going to teach as you normally would, and then you ask the question again at the end. And so it's kind of like a pre-post kind of question. You could do that asynchronously using ungraded quiz or like a knowledge check to open up content. And then students would work through the online content. And then at the end, you would use that same ungraded quiz or knowledge check to allow them to check whether they kind of got it or not. And then you can compare the questions. For the in-person, the RI flipped or hybrid, you can use use one of the online asynchronous options unless the content is being talked about in person, and then you could do that on paper, or you could do something like a poll anywhere question or like something like that, other tools. Okay. So the next one is mind mapping. And so that one was a pretty simple one. This one's a little bit more complicated. And so mind mapping's technique that helps students visualize their thoughts and communicate them to others. So mind maps help students understand how topics are connected to each other. And and so we've got the three different things, and you'll notice there's a lot more text on these pages because it's a much more complicated instructional strategy. In all of them, you introduce the project and you break students into groups. How you do that might be different. For the online synchronous, you would use breakout rooms. Asynchronous, you would create the teams using your LMS group space. And in the RI flipped or hybrid, you would just break students into in person. You would just pick teams that way. And so you instruct your students to use the integrated whiteboard that's part of your LMS. Each team then will come back from the breakout room and share their map. And then once that's done, the faculty then would share their map as an exemplar. And then the class would then discuss the similarities and differences in the maps. And so that would help them kind of understand how the content that they had maybe learned previously in the week all kind of connects together. The online asynchronous part of this utilizes discussion groups. And so each group would create their mapping tool and post it into a discussion. And the faculty member would do the same thing, share their map into the discussion. And then the class would then discuss the similarities and differences. And in each one of these cases, the faculty would follow up with either an explanation of everything or something written. The students can kind of take away with that so they can correct their knowledge, their understanding with the content that was shared. For the inline in-person, post-it notes would work, or writing on a whiteboard, or if that in-person part is an online synchronous, then maybe that would be an online, one of the maybe the integrated whiteboard. And again, they share their map. The faculty shares his map or her map, and then the class discusses similarities and differences, either in person or online synchronously. And so that's the way that this one would work. So it's different, but you end up with the same results at the end. Okay, what time is it? Uh-oh. We are really out of time. So I was going to have you do this as well, but we ran out of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and share the resources here. And thank you all for coming to the session. It's 12:51. So if you have to go, great. If not, I have time to stick around for a few questions if anybody wants to unmute and ask the questions. Oh, you're all very welcome. Thanks so much for coming and participating. That's great. And I will, before you leave, I'll send you the URL to um, this document has a link to the presentation that I gave, as well as all of our documents, our activity files, and the flexible teaching guide. And that's open. Anybody can check it out. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Looks like they're all bailing.
Yeah, looks like it. It's just you and me.
It's just us.
Thanks. I think really gave some good information to folks.
Well, great. I got tied up with the whole tiny URL thing.
Yeah.
I could have planned that a little bit better, but I got through most of it. Most of
No,
the good stuff. So I wanted to try to make it active because it was about engagement. So, and I knew if I let people talk, we would have gotten off topic. So that's why I decided to go with the chat. So,
no, it's great, really. Um, my goal is always to have sessions that people can take away something that they can implement. So,
well,
hopefully,
I hope I succeeded in that. So thank you for reaching out to have me present this. I presented something very similar, except it was a 90-minute presentation at OLC several years ago. And so uh, trying to take it from 90 minutes down to 50 minutes was a little challenging, but it didn't work out too bad. So,
you did great.
all
Well,
right.
I'm going to first